Oral questions, l'honorable chef de l'opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives would have liked to work hard in Parliament today to do something about real estate inflation that has doubled costs over 9 years of this Liberal government, or food inflation, which is 36% higher than in the United States. But unfortunately, instead, Parliament is paralyzed due to this Prime Minister. He paralyzed this House by blocking the documents that we ordered to be sent to the RCMP about a $400 million scandal. What exactly is this Prime Minister hiding? The Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What the Leader of the Opposition said is completely false. Let me read what the RCMP said about this motion. They said there is a significant risk that this motion may be seen as a way of sidestepping normal inquiry processes and protecting the Charter. We are ready to send this to committee and return to the important business of this House. Thank you. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, this is a $400 million scandal, 8 times more than the sponsorship scandal in financial terms. The AG has found that there were 186 conflicts of interest. The leader of the Green Slush Fund has already been found guilty of violating the law. When someone steals from you, do you call the cops or do you simply send the matter to a committee? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, it's very clear that Canadians have had enough of the little games played by the Conservative Party, and they're tired of these Conservative slogans. They've also had enough of the Conservative filibustering. On this side of the House, as we've said several times, we will always be here to protect people's rights and freedoms in Canada. We will always stand up for democracy, and we will fight for Canada. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Conservatives would have liked to be working today to counter the doubling of housing costs this Prime Minister has caused, or the record food price inflation, which has been 36% higher in Canada than in the U.S. But unfortunately, the Prime Minister has paralyzed Parliament by refusing your ruling directing his government to turn over evidence in the $400 million Green Slush Fund scandal that the Auditor General says involves 186 conflicts of interest, with the chair of the fund found guilty. What has he got to hide?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is not being truthful with Canadians. It is the RCMP Commissioner himself who said the RCMP's ability to receive and use information obtained through this production order and under the compulsory powers afforded by the Auditor General Act in the course of a criminal investigation could give rise to concerns under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It is therefore highly unlikely that any information obtained by the RCMP under the motion where privacy interests exist could be used to support a criminal prosecution or further a criminal investigation. Mr. Speaker, let's get this.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This is a $400 million scandal involving Liberal appointees giving millions of dollars to their own companies, and the minister's story is now changing. Yep. Last week, she claimed that the government had given documents to the RCMP. This week, they claim that if they gave documents to the RCMP, it would cause the Charter of Rights to come crashing down. It sounds like there's a new story every week to justify paralyzing Parliament to cover up the truth. What is in these documents about this $400 million scandal that the Prime Minister is so afraid of?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
This is a typical witch hunt from the leader of the opposition to go after people who have nothing to do with this. These are files such as personnel files that contain private information of individuals who have nothing to do with what is going on. Mr. Speaker, it is the RCMP and the Auditor General themselves who raised concerns with this motion, and it is the government's view that we should send this to committee so that we can get on with the important work of this House and protect the rights of Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
A witch hunt? The Ethics Commissioner appointed by this government has found the chair of the fund in violation of the law. The Auditor General, also appointed by this government, says there were 186 conflicts of interest involving Liberal appointees giving millions of dollars to their own companies. $400 million. Potential criminality, according to the main whistleblower in the scandal. Any other employer would voluntarily turn over all the evidence to the police if it had been ripped off by its own staff. What is the Prime Minister hiding?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, if and when the police request that information, it will obviously be handed over because that is proper judicial process. But when it is Parliament that is doing it, this is where Canadians should be concerned, Mr. Speaker, because when he is going after the rights of other Canadians, it's only a matter of time before his political vendettas come after the rights of all Canadians. Mr. Speaker.
We're going to have Deputy de Bellèche. The Honourable Member from Dufferin-Caledon.
Taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up, and corruption is off the charts. A fish rots from the head down. So is it any wonder that Liberal cronies appointed to the Green Slush Fund by a Prime Minister twice convicted of ethics violations engaged in corruption? And this is not small corruption, Mr. Speaker. It's $400 million. And, Mr. Speaker, you ordered the production of these documents. Why won't these Liberals stop the cover-up and produce them?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, it's only 9 minutes in question period and slogans are up, Mr. Speaker. Slogans are up again. Canadians are sick and tired of them, Mr. Speaker, repeating the same false things, Mr. Speaker, and repeating the same slogan. What these Conservatives are about, Mr. Speaker, is going after the personal file of employees and former employees. They're targeting STDC today. Who are they going to target tomorrow? That's what on this side that I have. We stand for democracy. We'll stand for rights. We'll stand up for Canada.
The Honourable Member from Dufferin-Caledon.
It's pretty simple who we're targeting, Mr. Speaker. We're targeting corruption, corruption that they enabled, corruption that they're hiding, and corruption that they refuse to produce the documents for. Mr. Speaker, these are documents that you ordered the production of. So Canadians should ask themselves, why aren't they producing them? They're not producing them because they are so damaging. They are so bad. They will destroy this government, and therefore they've used up 7 days of House of Commons time to hide their corruption. Stop the corruption. Produce the documents. Right.
Colleagues, the Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, again, the Conservatives are saying things that are false. The only party that has been putting up speakers for the past week are the Conservatives. So they are the ones that are filibustering their own motion. But let's talk about why they might be filibustering that motion. Rob Walsh, the former law clerk, said, in my humble opinion, it is an abuse of its powers for the House to use its power to demand
Chers colleagues, it is so important for us to allow one speaker to speak at a time because we have a very large place here with many members. It's difficult for those who require the use of their earphones to be able to hear the interpretation So the Honourable Leader of the Government, I'm going to ask her to repeat her answer again because I know that I've got some hand signals from members who were not able to hear that answer. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I notice the volume gets up when they don't want to hear the truth. So let's go back to that. The only members of Parliament who have been debating this motion are Conservative members of Parliament. They are filibustering their own motion. And let me tell you why, Mr. Speaker. It might have something to do with Rob Walsh, the former law clerk, who stated, "It is an abuse of its powers for the House to use its power to demand and get documents from the government in order to transfer them to a third party that wouldn't otherwise receive them, or to compel the government to give documents to the third party." They want to get around the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They're going after Canadians. Who's next?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member from Mission Matsby, Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. The Auditor General reported 186 conflicts of interest and over $400 million in misspent funds that went to Liberal insiders. The Minister of Environment's former employer, Cycle Capital, received $250 million from the Green Slush Fund, all while over half of Canadian small businesses are losing money year over year. Why is it okay for Liberals to enrich their friends while small businesses are struggling to stay afloat?
The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
You know, Mr. Speaker, what's not okay is for the Conservative to repeat the same thing time and time again when they know it's false, Mr. Speaker. Exactly. Because the reality, and let's talk about facts, Mr. Speaker. The entity they're talking about was created in 2001. It was managed by the Conservative for 9 years, Mr. Speaker. The CEO of that organization is gone, the board is gone, and the foundation no longer exists, Mr. Speaker. That is the reality. What the Conservative are about is going after ordinary Canadians, those who work at this organization, Mr. Speaker. We're going to stand for democracy, we're going to stand for rights, and we're going to stand for the work that needs to be done by this House, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Mission. The Honourable Member from Mission Matsby, Fraser Canyon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada lost 9,037 businesses from May to June 2024, and 6,331 declared insolvency year over year. The closures we're witnessing right now haven't been this large since the pandemic, when the entire country was shut down. So when Canadian entrepreneurs and workers are struggling, business is still booming for Liberal insiders. Why is the Prime Minister hiding behind the Green Slush Fund documents, and when will he release them to Parliament?
From Perth, Wellington.
After 9 years of these NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. Mr. Speaker, you yourself ruled that this government violated an order of this House to turn over evidence to the police for a criminal investigation into the latest Liberal scandal. The government's refusal to accept your ruling has paralyzed Parliament, pushing aside our work to address the doubling of housing costs, food inflation, crime, and chaos. Will the Minister end the cover-up, give the proof to the RCMP so we can get Parliament working again for all Canadians?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, what the members opposite are saying is not true. Your ruling was very clear. Because of the unprecedented nature of that motion, it should go to the Procedure and House Affairs Committee for study. The RCMP and the Auditor General raised their extreme discomfort with the Conservative motion. Canadians should be concerned because the Conservatives are going after whoever they hold a political grudge against, and this could be them next. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Montmagny, Lillet, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, this is a $400 million scandal. That's the amount of taxpayer money that has ended up in the pockets of Liberal buddies. Meanwhile, Canadians are facing food insecurity, crime, and skyrocketing housing costs. And instead, this Liberal corruption is blocking our parliamentary work. It is completely paralyzed due to this Liberal government's corruption and financial mismanagement. Will this government finally provide the documents so that we can get back to work? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague spoke about financial accountability, and here's what the RCMP had to say about responsibility. He said that the RCMP is an arm's-length organization and that he completely supports the independence of police forces in a democratic society, which means that this House and government cannot direct police operations. Can anything be clearer than that? Do the Conservatives need a briefing with a leader of the RCMP? It should be clear enough, in my opinion.
The honourable member from Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up. The corruption of this Liberal government knows no bounds. The Liberal Minister of Employment has continuously misled Parliament about his alter ego, the other Randy. Texts from his business partner reference a Randy, and we now know there was no other Randy involved in the fraudulent medical supply company while he was a sitting member of Cabinet. When will the Minister come clean with Canadians, end this charade, and resign?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Ethics Commissioner has looked into this matter 3 times and each time has confirmed he has no concerns. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Edmonton West.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 long years of this Liberal NDP government, taxes are up, costs are up, corruption is up, and apparently the amount of Randys is up. The Minister of Employment has been accused of violating the law by engaging in improper business dealings with his corrupt, scandal-plagued partner. The Minister claimed he wasn't involved in this business, but was later forced to admit that he was. He should admit he is the other Randy and that he violated the law. When will the Minister come clean and admit to everyone what we all know?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Mr. Speaker, as I just said, the Ethics Commissioner has looked into this matter 3 times and each time has confirmed he has no concerns. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Calgary Shepherd.
9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is now up for them. The Liberal minister from Edmonton claimed he had no contact with his business partner during an alleged $500,000 fraud linked to the other Randy. But phone records and text messages now show the complete opposite. It seems the minister made a habit of bending the rules and using his influence to benefit his business partner. The same business partner that you, Speaker, have now found is in contempt of Parliament. So it's really simple. Will the minister admit that the charade is up and then admit that he broke the law and confirm that he is in fact the other Randy?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In case my honourable colleague didn't hear my previous answer, as I stated, the Ethics Commissioner has looked into this matter 3 times and each time has confirmed he has no concerns. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, Fact 1, PFLP is a listed terrorist entity. Fact 2, Khalid Barakat was a member of PFLP when he founded Sammy Doon in 2012, and his wife Charlotte Cates incorporated Sammy Doon under Canadian law in 2021. Fact 3, under Section 8305 of the Criminal Code, any entity that has knowingly acted on behalf of, at the direction of, or in association with a listed entity can be listed. The facts are clear. The government's position is not. Why hasn't the government listed Sammy Doon as a terrorist entity under the Criminal Code?
The Honourable Minister for Public Security.
Speaker, the government's position has in fact been very clear. Decisions around listing terrorist entities are made based on the advice of security and intelligence officials. My colleague, the Parliamentary Secretary, made it clear yesterday. I have instructed the security and intelligence agencies that report to us to do on an expedited basis a review of these matters. And I've said, Mr. Speaker, we hope to come back to Canadians with information very soon.
After 9 years, the NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, grocery prices are up, and time is up. A year ago, the Liberals promised to lower food prices by Thanksgiving. All Canadians got were empty promises and empty stomachs. Now they're going to pay $80 for a turkey this Thanksgiving. Food inflation in Canada is 37% higher than the United States. Food security is up 111% thanks to the NDP Liberal carbon tax. Well, the NDP Liberal government axed the carbon tax so Canadians can afford a Thanksgiving dinner.
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I can assure the member that it's much cheaper at Thanksgiving dinner in Shawinigan. I don't know where he's shopping for his turkey, Mr. Speaker. I'll invite him to my house in Shawinigan. He'll find out it's a bit cheaper. But, Mr. Speaker, the reality is what is this government has done, and it's said by all the economists in Canada, Mr. Speaker, what we've done, which is the most significant thing, is to reform competition in this country, Mr. Speaker, to have less concentration, more choice for consumer, which stabilize price, Mr. Speaker. And in addition, they should celebrate. We now have a grocery code of conduct in this country, Mr. Speaker, to bring more fairness and stabilize price in the country.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
I don't think many Canadians find the minister making fun of their struggles much of a joke.
That's right.
Because the reality is, for many Canadians, buying that turkey for Thanksgiving is just a dream. The Liberal NDP government has made the Canadian dream a food bank nightmare. 1 million Canadians just in Ontario went to a food bank last year, up 25%. And now doctors are raising the alarm on scurvy in Canada because Canadians can't afford basic nutrition. Will the Liberal NDP government make the Canadian dream come true and call a carbon tax election?
Yeah, let's go. The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, I'm proud that in 2016 we introduced the Canada Child Benefit. Mr. Speaker, there's 4.3 million families and over 7 million children across this country who receive this benefit. Benefit each and every month. That's $547 a month for parents with children ages 6 to 18, or $648 each month. I got to speak recently with a new mom named Madeline who shared how impactful this is for her family. The position the Conservatives have...
L'honorable député de Portneuf.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, it's just unreal how out of touch this Liberal government is. Over the past 9 years of this Liberal government, the cost of living has skyrocketed. I urge the Liberals to climb down from their ivory tower and go to a grocery store. It's crazy how high prices are, how much they've gone up. And the Bloc Québécois is constantly voting to keep this Liberal government in place. I beg the Bloc Québécois to please not take Quebecers for fools. When is this Liberal government going to have some common sense and stop wasting the money of honest and hardworking Canadians? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives are very hypocritical. They talk about Canadians in need, but they don't support funding community food programs and not-for-profit organizations. They talk about people living on the street, but they oppose investments to build more housing. They have a hidden agenda, Mr. Speaker, and everything they say in this House is utter nonsense.
The Honourable Member from Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the government has all sorts of excuses why it won't provide documents to this House or to the RCMP about the $400 million spending scandal. They falsely claim it would violate privacy and that it would negatively impact the RCMP's investigation and that it would violate charter rights. The Constitution is clear. Parliament is supreme. Parliament has the lawful authority to order the production of documents. So why is this government consistently trampling on the constitutional authority of this House?
Yeah.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, that was some incredible doublespeak from my colleague across the way. It's actually the RCMP who has said this, and I quote, "The RCMP's ability to receive and use information obtained through this production order and under the compulsory powers afforded by the Auditor General Act in the course of a criminal investigation could give rise to concerns under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. There is significant risk that the motion can be interpreted as a circumvention of normal investigative processes and charter protections. For a party that claims to respect the police, they certainly don't respect police independence.
Exactement.
The honourable member from Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms also includes Sections 3, Sections 4, and Sections 5, which is about the democratic rights of Canadians. And Canadians have the right to be democratically elected on the floor of this House, and the majority of this House has demanded the production of these documents related to the $400 million spending scandal. We did the same thing with the Winnipeg lab documents. Why does this government consistently ignore the democratic wishes of the people's elected representatives and deny this House documents?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney
Mr.
General.
I have a lot of respect for that member opposite because he usually stands up for institutions, including this place. What he's not standing up for right now is for the independence of law enforcement in this country. The independence of law enforcement is pivotal. And what my colleague was emphasizing is that usually my friends opposite are constantly listening to the police. This is what the Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP said on the news yesterday. It's a very dangerous situation. The rule of law is predicated upon a separation between what Parliament is doing and what law enforcement agencies are doing. In this case, the RCMP. We're listening to those RCMP commissioners and former commissioners. I wish the member opposite would do the same.
The honourable member from Calgary Heritage.
Mr. Speaker, for years they've known Sami Doon as a known terror affiliate. On October 7th, they chanted, "We are Hezbollah, we are Hamas, death to Canada, death to America, death to Israel." They incited hate, they incited terror, they burned our flag. Why does our foreign minister fail to act when Canada is threatened? Well, she told Tom Mulcair it's about the demographics of her voters. Mr. Speaker, why does this minister put partisan politics over Canadian national security interests?
Order. The Honourable Minister for Public Security.
Mr. Speaker, our government is deeply concerned about the national security interest of Canadians. That's why we support the law enforcement agencies and the security agencies to do this important work. That's why we rely on their advice to decide when the government, under the Criminal Code of Canada, should list a terrorist entity. Mr. Speaker, good news. These security agencies are constantly reviewing a whole series of organizations to determine if the threshold has been met. I recently talked to them as late as this morning, and I'm very confident that we'll have some important news very quickly.
Mr. Speaker, earlier, during question period, the member for Outremont used non-parliamentary language. I would like to invite her to take back what she said and to apologize.
L'honorable député d'Outremont.
The honourable member for Outremont. Mr. Speaker, I think if you look back at the Hansard, you will see that that language has already been used, and I will be happy to give a further answer once you have been able to look into this.
From Regina Capella is rising on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, the House Leader said that Liberals weren't participating in the current debate on Liberal corruption. I just wanted to know if I could table the speeches from the member from Winnipeg.
So the honourable member unfortunately does not have unanimous consent to be able to table that document. Pour revenir.
As I was saying, coming back to the point of order raised by the member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier, I will indeed look back and look into this, but based on my own memory, I think the word used was a word that, although it is regrettable, is one that is used frequently in this House, but I will come back to this if necessary. It being 3:21 p.m., the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion to concur in the 31st